Hello and welcome to What's Sizzling, a podcast that covers all things marketing. We have new guests each episode from companies covering all verticals. As always, I'm your host, Mitch Levinson, and with me today I have Julia O'Connor.
Hi, Mitch.
We're with Creative Sizzle, and in this week's episode, we're going to talk with John Wilkinson with Credit Solutions Programs. And it's great, Julia, when we have a client on the show. Now, Credit Solutions Programs they're a not-for-profit, and they help people with their credit, improving their credit and education about their credit. And it's really fun when we have a client as a guest on our show because we can talk about, some of the things we've done with them. And
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's great to have on some of our clients. We know some of their struggles, their strengths. We really know them from a much more personal level. So it's fun to be able to have a discussion with them on this platform.
And I love having John on the show. And I was on his podcast a couple of weeks back. The Financial Truths is what it's called. And for those of you that are listening, you should go check out that podcast. That was great. It was about money matters. It was a great podcast. We really learned a lot about him, and he is really great helping people understand what makes up their credit score. And I never have met before a certified FICO professional. So, he knows exactly what goes into those algorithms to improve your credit score and to make it a good score. So he has great advice on what you need to do to make your score better. So I've really never met a certified FICO professional before.
Yeah, no, me neither. I think he's got so many cool credentials he's a credit expert witness. He's a credit score improvement specialist. Like you said, the certified FICO professional, personal and business credit coach. He's got just so many great credentials and titles to him. So I can't wait to hear, what he has to say about some of those parts of his life. But yeah, he's a cool guy.
He is, for sure. And more importantly, we also know he's disciplined and dedicated from his time in the Marines. So I want him fighting on my side for sure if I ever need that, especially when it comes to improving my credit score. Yeah, everybody wants a better credit score, no matter what your score is. Today's episode, you're really going to enjoy, and stay tuned until the end because he has a very good offer for everyone to understand what your credit score is and if there are any things that you can do to help improve it. So stay tuned to the end. You're really going to enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
With that, we're going to take our first break, and we'll be back in a minute with John Wilkinson. This episode is brought to you by digital advertising acronyms. SEO, SEM, and PPC are acronyms that can be confusing marketing tactics. Although they're not the same, they are frequently used interchangeably by people that don't truly understand them. It is important to have someone who knows how to write ads so you can maximize your PPC, pay per click, and SEM, search engine marketing, budgets, and get the most clicks and leads. That's where we come in. CreativeSizzle.com is where you should go to learn more about these marketing tactics. And now, let's get back to What's Sizzling. Welcome back to What's Sizzling podcast. We're here today with John Wilkinson with Credit Solutions Programs. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. You had me on your podcast, and I stumbled across in the opening segment the name of the podcast. So tell us real quickly a little bit about the podcast that you have, or the radio show you have.
Yeah, so it's called The Financial Truths. It's just informing the average consumer what the average consumer may not know when it comes to finances, such as, paying off a mortgage, a 30-year mortgage. Halfway is not until year 23, not year 15, such as that.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot to financial information, and especially today we're talking about credit reports. So tell me, how did you get into the business? What prompted you to want to learn all you could about finance, credit scores, credit analysis? What got you into the business?
Sure. So, I came from Georgia, did a couple years in college at the Marines. Was going to finish up college when I got out. But, I stayed in California where I was stationed at, with Northern California, where the cost of living was astronomical. And, I wanted to buy a house, but just wasn't happening in that region. So, I moved to South Florida, got a job down here, stayed about a year, went to go buy my first house, had some student loans that were in default. Anyway, so I got those under control, got those back in, and then I just didn't understand what's affecting my credit. So I got credit monitoring. I did this, I did that, watch the scores go up, watch the scores go down. I don't know about you, I'm from Generation X, and we wasn't really taught, life skills in high school or college.
I'm also Gen X. Julia's Y right behind us, but I can remember learning typing in high school. I can remember taking computer programming in high school and college. I can remember taking accounting and finance and statistics, but there wasn't really a class for your credit or managing money or life skills related to work or having a job or earning money or any of those things. And those are, your living expenses are really taking advantage of those living expenses, are what put some people in their credit situation. So yeah, you're right. There isn't really a lot of formal education through the institutions for, that kind of information.
That's very right. And so that's why our mission is to really get this into public schools around the country. We're first getting into colleges and then going to push the politicians to get it into the public schools so that that we all have to play this game, but we don't know the rules to it. Everybody should know the rules to the game since we all have to play it, and we understand that stuff happens in life as well, divorces, death, sickness, all kinds of different things. So we're here to give people a second chance to get their credit straightened out and to give them the correct information to maintain a positive credit and, get the credit scores as high as possible when they need to.
Yeah. And as a not-for-profit, I think, I really enjoy working with you and your company because you're helping a lot of people. People got into financial trouble and they need help getting out of it. And being a not-for-profit and trying to put this education in the right place into the hands of the people that need it, people will support you with donations and other ways. So I hope people support you from this podcast. So if you can visit his website, and I'm going to, John, let you direct them to where you want them to go right now. But donations really help support this program. And as a not-for-profit, it really will help.
Yeah, so that's creditproblemsolved.org, creditproblemsolved.org. And there's a lot of resources from helping you rebuild your credit, teaching you how to maximize your credit scores, all the way to secure credit card companies, that we had invented and so forth. So there's a lot of information. And if you need our service, we're here to help you. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's great. And, the interesting, Julie and I talked about it right before you jumped on the call, knowing what goes into your credit score and knowing that certified FICO certification that you have really gives you an edge over a lot of the other companies or not-for-profits that help people with their credit because you are certified, what goes into the credit score and what the algorithm is. So, you are in a better position than most to help people understand their credit and give them the guidelines that they need and the education that they need in order to improve their credit.
That's very right, because, most of credit repair companies, so to speak, charges a monthly fee. I mean, from the big ones, Lexington Law, which owns creditrepair.com, to Oval and a bunch of different ones. We don't charge that monthly fee because we feel like you should only pay for what you get, only based off our performance. If we don't remove something, you don't pay us. Simple as that. If we remove it, you pay us. Some of the biggest challenge that we have is actually getting clients to understand that, it's a two-way street. It's not just us removing negative information and, you got great credit. No, you got to have positive information on there. You got to have that positive information in a certain way that it reports to maximize those credit scores. So we're not only there to remove the negative information since you went through a rough time in life or whatever the case may be, but we're there to educate you for the long run in your life to maximize that credit score. So you get the best possible interest rates, you get the approvals and so forth, and really get to really control your credit the way you should and have it maintained.
It's funny, you and I talk a lot, but we talked recently about, some of the funny questions we get when when people first come to us and the question that you brought up is I get a very similar kind of a question in my world. People say, oh, well, how much does it cost to build a website? I mean, obviously there's a lot of factors that go into, how technical it's going to be, what kind of message you're delivering and how customizable do you want it? And there's lots of things that determine a price of that. But for you, the funny thing you were saying is for someone to come to you and say, well, how much can you improve my score? Like that's a funny question. So how do you answer that question? Or I imagine almost everyone asks it, right?
Well, not everybody, but it's a common question that we get. And it's so funny that I actually had that question just today. Somebody says, hey, my credit score is a 580. How quickly can you get it to a 620? Well, listen, everybody's unique as a person, but everybody has unique credit files as well. You're not going to see exactly the same thing on each person's credit file, right? So, you have to have positive things to push up the score. Negative things, of course, are going to pull down the score. But if you don't have the positive things to push up the score, well, even though removing the negative things, it's not going to help the score. So you got to know that question, we're not going to know anything until we see the actual reports. Simple as that.
So what tips would you give people who are thinking about their credit score, whether they're getting ready to buy a house or, they have that in their future, or they want a new car, or they want to get a car or a loan some way, or they want even as much as they want an increase of their credit card or something like that? Or, what tips can you give them of things that they should do, they shouldn't do?
Sure. So, well, the first and foremost is before you do anything, you want to know where you're at, so even if you go to Credit Karma, which gives you your Vantage scores, which is only about 10% of the market. So really it's the FICO credit score that majority of the lenders use. But you want to get on there and at least see what's on the credit, about where your credit scores are. So Credit Karma is going to give you a general idea. And then it's going to give you a chart and show you how many negative items, how many positive, and how long your credit's been in existence and so forth. And those will show you, which ones are good and which ones are bad and so forth. Usually the quickest way to get your credit scores higher, in most cases, in a lot of cases, if you have credit cards and you have a high balance, paying those off or down as much as possible, off is best, but leaving those open, once that new balance reports, then that credit score is going to shoot up. That's usually the number one thing that we see, as far as raising up your credit scores. But again, everybody's on a case-by-case basis. Maybe you don't have a credit card and you need a credit card. So you really need to know, what makes up the credit score. Simply put, on the FICOs, 35, 30, 15, 10, 10. Everything goes in percentages, no matter what kind of credit score it is. But just know you have different scoring models. You have different versions of each scoring model as well. So it does get complicated, but as long as you know about the general rules of how the credit score is made, and you saw your credit report, then you'll know what you need to do to get the scores higher.
That's interesting. You brought up the financial models. When I was in college, people would say, well, you don't have any credit cards, you don't have any debt. You need to get a little bit of debt, but not too much debt in order to improve your credit score. So you got to get a credit card. And then you want to pay it off every month, but you don't want to pay it off every month. And you don't want it to be maxed out all the way. You want to have some on it, but you don't want nothing on it. But there's a percentage of how much your credit, how much you should use on your credit to get it. Can you tell us a little bit about, what kind of guidance would you give? And is your advice different for people at different life stages, like someone right out of college or, someone in the middle of their career versus someone getting ready to retire or something like that?
Actually, no, my advice is pretty straight right across the board. As when it comes to credit cards, you need at least one. Now, a credit card could be, your Visa, MasterCard, Discover, or it could be Fingerhut, like an online shopping, to a store department card, Macy's, Target, whatever, as long as it's reporting as what we call a revolving account. You pay, you borrow, right? Never ending. So what we tell people, as long as you have one of those, use it, buy something small. When the bill comes in, pay it off, and then every 4 to 6 months, rinse and repeat. Right? So you just got to have one revolving, because it's called what we call mixed credit, which is 10% of the FICO credit score. So if you have no revolving debt and only installment, then you're not going to get that 10% of the FICO credit score. So if you got one revolving, one installment, you get that 10% of the FICO credit score. As you know, it's 300 to 850. That's 550 points, 10% being 55 up to 55 points.
That's great. That's definitely great advice. And you also mentioned something about the age of your credit and how long you've had. Can you share with us a little bit of advice about that? Because, sometimes you go through your life and you get too many credit cards. You have so many credit cards, like you said, Finger Hut or Kohl's or, some of the local stores that you have, they all have their own credit card. So you have 3 or 6 of those. And then you have, you got one of them, you got a Visa, you got a MasterCard, you got American Express, you got Discover, you got all of those. And your bank gives you a debit card, which also comes with a credit card. So now I have all these credit cards and I don't need them all. And in fact, having them all is going to get me into trouble. So tell me what you suggest to people when they're on the verge of having too many options available. What's the best option in a scenario like that?
Okay, so excellent question there. So for a scenario like that, which we've heard that before, matter of fact, there was a case in California where a lady could buy a house just using all her credit cards available. And so they had to make her decrease or close some. But anyway, so to get back to the question is, one is if you're going to close any credit cards, right? Then if it's like a store department cards, which I don't really care for because you can only use it at that one store. So, and if you don't go to that store hardly, then maybe that's the one you want to close. And then also close your newest accounts. So if you open, let's say you got most of your credit cards are anywhere from 10 to 5 years old, but you just opened one a year or two ago, then that would be the one to close. Because remember, it's the age. So the age has to do with each account, when it was open, and then the last time, either when it was closed or last time reported if it's still an open account. And so that's why we tell people, do not close your credit card accounts. Why? Because it's never ending. As long as you don't close it, they don't close it. It's going to keep going forever. Oh, but my interest rate is 29.9%. Well, who cares? Zero of anything is still zero. If you do what I say, pay off the card, rinse and repeat every 4 to 6 months, that's it. Okay, so you want to look at the age of each of accounts, close the newest accounts, and then preferably those store department cards, but at least leave one open. And again, if you're going to close accounts too, you have to look at the credit limits and the balances that you carry on all your credit cards combined. So if you're closing accounts and you have to add the available credit limits minus the closed accounts, right? Of course, only the open accounts versus your balances. And you want to have that ratio as low as possible. So that's another factor to consider as well.
Everyone's credit is unique to themselves, and every person has a different set of things that they could do to improve theirs and theirs only individually. So I think that's great. And what you are willing to offer our listeners is great. I'm going to tease it a little bit right here, but we're going to have them stay tuned to the third segment so that we can talk a little bit about that afterwards. But if anyone is thinking about their credit and they want to do something about it, stay tuned, because you're going to get an offer from John that is really going to help you out. And John, as we wrap up, I heard something last week from a mortgage broker that I thought was interesting. I do a lot of networking and I talk to a lot of people, and it was the first time that I had heard this, and I've never heard of this before. And I know that, you have history as a mortgage broker yourself, but this is a credit specific question. She said one of the ways, it's new now, a new way for people to help improve their credit is this thing called self-reporting of their utilities or their online streaming music apps or their other things. And I'd never heard of that. So is there real value in self-reporting? How do you do it? What can you self-report? Or is it just kind of a trend that the credit report really doesn't look at or whatever? Talk a little bit about self-reporting.
Sure. For self-reporting, at first, it was kind of, Experian came out with what they call Experian Boost. That really had to do with self-reporting. But it's came along since then quite a bit to where you can actually get your rental, let's say you're renting a property, as long as you haven't been 30 days late, of course, at any given time, you can have a 2-year history added to your credit. And if you go through a certain company, matter of fact, hit us up and we will sign you up with the company, have that reported. And we can actually have it affect all FICO versions of your credit score. So that's including the mortgage scores as well. So now some self-reporting does not affect all versions of the FICO credit score, hence the mortgage credit scores. So you have to be careful of self-reporting. It might only affect FICO 8 or FICO 9 and not the previous versions, hence doing your utility bills and stuff like that. They have included the rent, but as far as utility bills and things of that nature affecting the mortgage FICO credit score, only thing that I know of is the actual rental reporting.
That's interesting. Yeah. I never heard of that before. She mentioned that you could, provided, again, like you said, you're in good history with the company, you could add your utilities and you could add your water, your gas, your garbage. And then someone told me that they did the Experian Boost or something like that, and they were able to add their Hulu or their Spotify and their, whatever. And I'm like, to me, that just sounds like, it doesn't sound real, right? I mean, I understand rent and I understand utilities. And I also understand this concept of, if I'm self-reporting it, how do you know it's real?
Yes, you're self-reporting it, but you're not self-reporting it. Let me clarify that. You're self-reporting it is you're starting the initiation of having it reported on your credit, but there's certain stipulations. You can't just say, okay, yeah, I'm paying on time and report it on my credit. No, they're going to verify it with a credible source. So in certain situations, if you're renting from a private individual, they might not let you do that. But if you're renting from a management company, then of course you could have it reported. So there's certain stipulations with that safeguards from just people reporting good things that are not necessarily true.
That makes a lot more sense. John, I'm glad to have you on the show. Obviously, our listeners know just by hearing you that not only you know what you're talking about and everything you said was credible, that is what makes your business stand out. You are, with all of your experience and resources and education. Stay tuned to hear of the offer if you're looking to improve your credit score. And again, if you're willing to donate to those folks that might need it, please, by all means, visit John's site. John, go ahead and tell people how to contact you.
Again, creditproblemsolve.org or our toll-free 866-850-9360.
Awesome, John. Thank you very much for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome back to What's Sizzling, a podcast about all things marketing. That was really a great episode with John. What did you think, Julia?
I had two sticking points, things that really resonated with me. First, and this one I had to Google to make sure that I was getting the saying correct. But the idea of, providing people with more than just, like a one-time fix or just that one solution, but really providing them with knowledge. So the saying it reminded me of was, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. And I thought that was brilliant. It's so good that he's doing that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I love that analogy. And, I'm sure we could have brought that up with John because being in Lauderhill, Florida, I'm sure they fish a lot down there and they got real good fresh fish too. So
exactly. And then the other thing I loved was the comparison of like, we're all playing the game, so we might as well know the rules. I thought that was so spot on. Like, have you ever been in that situation, Mitch, where you're like playing a game with somebody, like a board game or whatever? I know you're a sports guy, yeah. But and you're like, man, like, I don't really know the rules. I don't, and you feel kind of bad while you're playing the game. You're like, I don't even want to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's how board games are at my house. You've met my kids. So there are times when we were growing up, they would just be changing the rules on me. And I'm like, that is not a rule. And well, it is in our game. And that is now moving forward. So, right. So yeah, no, I don't like changing the rules. I want to know up front what it's going to be. And that's really good. And, the offer that he's making to our listeners, that's a great offer. So why don't you tell people a little bit about the offer, that if you're listening and you want to improve your credit score, or you are looking to buy a home or a car or whatever, and you need a little bit of improvement on your credit score, you definitely need to contact John. Julia, tell him what he's offering.
Yeah, John is giving a great offer. So he wants to offer you all a free credit analysis. So this analysis is valued at over $100, but he's going to offer it for free to any of our viewers or listeners. And the credit analysis, if I can talk, lets you know where you are at and, helps you develop a plan of action to get your score a little bit better. So it's a great offer. You should definitely take it up.
Yeah, so it's great. He'll, obviously run the report, and then having an action plan, steps to take that will help you in 1 month, in 3 months, in 6 months to be in a position to get a better mortgage, a lower rate, qualify yourself, and do some of those other things. It's a great offer, and everyone should take him up on that just to see what kind of things he offers. But it's always great to have him on the show. He's great personality. Obviously, he knows what he's talking about. He's been doing it a long time, and I just love talking with him on the phone.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. He's a great guy. It was so fun to listen to you guys chat, and I totally agree with you. Take him up on this offer. He's going to teach you how to fish.
Yep, creditproblemsolved.org, or again, his number is 866-850-9360. So thanks for joining us this week for another episode of What's Sizzling. Head on over to iTunes or wherever you're getting this podcast from to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It really helps out the show. As always, if you'd like more information about today's guest, becoming a guest yourself, or if you need marketing support, all that can be found at creativesizzle.com/what's sizzling. Thanks again. I'm Mitch Levinson.
And I'm Julia O'Connor.
And we'll see you next time.